a single coat, still hanging by the door, but the three men who wore it didn't just leave. They vanished into thin air. Their lamp was clean, their clock had stopped. And to this day, no one knows what happened on that rock. This is the Flannan Isles mystery. 20 miles off the west coast of Scotland, past the Outer Hebrides, lie the Flannan Isles. 7 barren rocks where no one has ever lived. The largest is called Eilean Moor, the Big Island, though it is barely half a mile wide. Sailors had feared these islands for centuries. They believed they were a place where men were not meant to stay. In 1899, engineers did the near impossible. They built a lighthouse on the cliffs of Eilean Moor, 150 feet above the sea. To reach it, keepers climbed long stone stairs cut straight into the rock face. 3 men lived there at a time in complete isolation, while a 4th rested on the mainland. Their only duty was to keep the light burning. The principal keeper was James Ducat, an experienced man with a wife and children waiting at home. With him were Thomas Marshall and Donald MacArthur, a local man with a fierce temper, filling in for a colleague who had fallen ill. In December of 1900, the 3 of them lit the great lamp, just as they always did. It would be the last time anyone saw them alive. On the night of December the 15th, a passing steamer called the Archtor sailed close to the islands. Its captain searched the darkness for the Flannan light and saw nothing at all. Only blackness, where the beam should have been sweeping the sea. He reported it when he reached port, but a brutal storm was battering the whole coast, and the relief boat could not sail. For 11 days, the rock sat silent. On December the 26th, the lighthouse tender Hesperus finally reached Eilean Moor. The crew sounded the ship's horn. They fired a flare into the gray sky. Nothing answered. No keeper appeared at the landing. No flag was flying. A young sailor named Joseph Moore was rowed to the rock, and he climbed those long stairs alone into a silence that felt deeply, terribly wrong. Moore found the entrance gate shut and the heavy door closed. Inside, the beds were empty. The clock on the wall had stopped. The ashes in the grate were stone cold, untouched for days. On the kitchen table, a meal sat half-eaten, and a single wooden chair lay overturned on the floor as though a man had risen in a sudden rush and simply never come back. Then came the detail that has haunted people ever since. By the door hung the keeper's heavy oilskin coats, the gear no man would face an Atlantic storm without. 2 of them were gone, but one still hung on its hook, Donald MacArthur's coat, which meant that one of the 3 men had run out into a deadly winter storm wearing no protection at all. The answer waited at the west landing on the far side of the island. There, the storm had left destruction that no one could fully explain. Iron railings were twisted and bent flat to the ground. A concrete block weighing more than a ton had been torn from its place, and a box of ropes, stored in a crevice 110 feet above the water, had been ripped out and scattered. The sea had reached that high and struck like a hammer. So what happened in those final minutes? Investigators pieced together the most likely answer, and it is terrifying. A fierce storm. Equipment down at the west landing about to be torn into the sea. 2 keepers climbing down in their oilskins to save it. And the 3rd, MacArthur, seeing a monstrous wave rise from the kitchen window and running out coatless, screaming a warning that came too late. In an instant, the sea reached all 3 of them at once and pulled them off the rock forever. It is the most likely answer, but it has never fully satisfied anyone. Why would experienced keepers stand so close to the sea in the middle of a storm? You may have read about strange final entries in their logbook. Marshall writing of a terrible storm. The brave Ducat reduced to crying. MacArthur praying. Chilling words. But here is the truth. Those entries are fiction, invented for a poem years later. The real logs recorded only the weather. Into that silence the legends poured. Some said a sea serpent had risen and taken the men. Others blamed ghosts or foreign spies or a phantom boat that carried them away. One later keeper swore the islands felt watched, that the seabirds there sat too still and stared too long. None of it can ever be proven, and none of it is truly needed. The Atlantic alone is monster enough. The light was relit, and keepers returned to Eilean Moor for another 70 years until machines finally replaced them in 1971. Today the lighthouse runs on its own. No one lives on the rock. The 3 men were never found. No bodies, no graves, Nothing for their families to bury. Only a clean lamp, a stopped clock, and a single coat that, more than a century later, still seems to be waiting by the door.